Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Mixed Martial Podcast. You came for the info, not the intro, so I'm going to jump straight into it, and we are going to talk about Izzy versus Strickland this weekend. It's not often that we get a guy fighting for a title that everyone says is going to lose. Everybody. There's obviously chances for Strickland to win. There's areas that he excels in, there's areas that he is lacking in, but I think Izzy pretty clearly outmatches him in the area that he would consider to be his expertise, right? So I feel like that's probably playing into a big part of the reason why people think that Strickland doesn't stand a chance. But I'm not counting him out. Regardless of what I think in terms of talent, it's always possible, right? Like, there's not many title fights I go into and say that guy can't win. Even when I'm rooting for a guy and I'm a bit biased, there's always a chance, and I'm always quite scared that guy could win, right? So I'm not counting him. I'm not going to act like Strickland can't win. Of course he can win. Strickland is not in the rankings for no reason. Like, he's beaten good guys and he has talent, and he's hard to put out. As Pahader's basically the only guy that's done it, as of recent at least. But I think that there is a lot on the line after this. When this fight happens, let's imagine it is the day after and Izzy won. Has Duplessis spoken yet? Has he said anything? Is Duplessis going to be in Sydney to actually step into the cage once again and face Adesanya the same way Adesanya faced him? Because that's what he should do if he wants this fight. Because Izzy won't hold out forever. Izzy will get sick of waiting. He'll get very sick of waiting. In fact, there is a lot of guys in that division waiting to get a spot that Duplessis has been given and chosen to throw away. So I think there is one way that Duplessis can get this fight. He just has to ask for it. That's it. Duplessis has the right to the belt in his hands. All he has to do is snap his fingers, and he'll be chosen. He'll be given on a gold platter. There is no way that anyone can say no for Duplessis having that fight. The only way that Duplessis will not fight Adesanya is if he chooses not to. And if he chooses not to now, but decides he does want to later, it might be too late. Because by then, there may be a second way that Duplessis doesn't get this fight. And that way is Adesanya says no. Adesanya doesn't say no. He sees a guy in front of him that's calling him out. It's a challenge in that division. And he goes, cool, another guy to add to my rankings. I want to make this clear. I want this message to be understood that I'm better than this guy, and you all need to stop talking about him. That's what Izzy does every time he goes into a fight. He pretty much gets a lot of shit saying that it's going to be a boring fight, or that this guy is finally going to be the guy to beat him. Not that Izzy hasn't lost before, obviously, we know that. But then he goes in there, and when he wins, he goes, see? I could beat him. There's plenty of guys like that. Izzy already knows he can beat them. That's the difference. I reckon Dricus, if he comes back now, after this fight with Strickland, has put a lot of doubt in Izzy's mind. Not necessarily that Izzy suddenly thinks that this guy can beat him, but I do think that there are some mind games into making Izzy think that he's not totally in control, even though he picks the fights and he's the champion. I reckon Dricus has a little bit of a want to do things the way he wants it, so that Izzy isn't sitting at the top saying, I brought you here, I'm the reason you're here, you begged for this fight. Because if he didn't do that, he's got a lot more of a leg to stand on when he wants to shit talk Izzy, which is something that a lot of guys fail with, right? They don't have anything to give Izzy shit on, because Izzy's usually the guy that's given them the opportunity. Izzy has probably beaten guys that beat that guy, but Dricus is different. He's very different. So I imagine that Dricus will call Izzy out after this fight. If he's not there to do so, he'll do it in the coming days. If he ever wants to be a UFC champion. Otherwise, it will never happen. It will never happen. If he doesn't do it next week, it won't happen. He'll never get a shot again unless someone else gets a title and he fights multiple contender fights again to get up to the top, because he's at the top and he said no. There's been one guy sitting at the top the whole time, below Izzy, just looking up, waiting, watching all these guys go past, saying, what the fuck, when's my turn? And he never gets to fight anyone. This is Robert Whittaker I'm talking about. He never gets to fight any of the good guys because they'll get sent to Izzy. And it's the same as Max Holloway, right, with Volkanovski. And then they said to Whittaker, okay, you want another shot? This guy wants a shot too. See what you can do. And for the first time, somebody beat that guy. And now, there's a real question for Izzy. There's never really been a question before because Whittaker could beat all the guys except Izzy. It's basically been a matter of Izzy wiping the floor and then Whittaker waiting for his next turn. But now, we've seen that Rob obviously has some holes and can be beaten by someone that's not Izzy. But does that mean that this guy is better than Izzy or just as good? Because some people think Rob won the second fight. Oh, I believe it was the second fight. I could be wrong. But one of those fights, people think that Rob either put up a really good fight or won it. It's a pretty common consensus, right? We get this a lot with series of championship fights. Someone saying, this guy won the first fight, or the second fight was way closer than everybody wants to admit. But that's in the conversation with Whittaker and Izzy, is the fact that Whittaker is not that much worse than Izzy, is really the argument, right? So, if that's the case, and Dricus fucked Whittaker up, unfortunately, how much better than Izzy could Dricus be? If at all. Because it seems like it's possible now. It seemed very impossible. It seemed like nobody was going to beat Izzy. But now, it's seeming more and more likely by the day. So, we will see. Next week, Dricus du Plessis. You better open your mouth, or else they'll be opening the door. Next up, Islam Makhachev and Volkanovski. Obviously, I've talked about this one a lot, but it should be mentioned now that the BMF fight is over. I wanted to mention it in my last one, but I forgot. Justin has claimed that he is due for the next title shot. Do you agree? And it's not maybe, it's not it could be, it's a yes or a no. Do you agree? You're not sure. Well, no one is. No one is. We have no idea. They're both sitting there saying, hey, I beat the last guy I fought. Let me back in for the belt again. And in Gaethje's position, he's saying, hey, I beat the last two guys I fought. Let me back in for the belt again. Volkanovski's only beat one guy. But Volkanovski hasn't lost to anyone else in a long time. Gaethje lost more recently. Also, one of those losses was to the guy fighting for the title right now. Volkanovski has not lost to anyone but the guy with the title. I think Volkanovski and Islam is more competitive than Gaethje and Islam. I want to see both fights, but the issue is we don't get that. We don't get to pick that, especially with the fact of thinking that one of them can beat Islam, because if they do, then we don't get the other fight. And we might even be forced into a different fight with Gaethje versus Volk. You know, that's not that that's not a good fight, but it's just not what we asked for. And sometimes people overlook that. The fact that when you got two number one contenders and one of them beats the other guy, you just built two storylines for one guy. Only one of them got to take that storyline. Now the other guy has got to forget it. Like, the moment the champion loses, that guy's like, hey, I've been trying to fight you and you wouldn't let me. You're out now. I don't want to fight you anymore. But you just wanted to fight me a month ago. So did this guy. He beat me. I'm saying now I'll give you the chance. But it's a no. Why? Because the circumstances changed. The game changes constantly. The belt changes waist all the time. Number one contenders get wiped out all the time. People get promised title shots and then not get them. It happens. But the question is really, who should be first? Not who I want to be first. Because I want Volk. And I feel like a lot of people want the rematch of that. But you got to look at the cards of earning the fights and say who deserves it. The guy who lost to him one fight ago, technically, or the guy who has never lost to him, but has lost every title fight he's had in the last 2 years. And he's, what's that? Is he two in his last 5 losses, I believe. Could be wrong. That could be 2-6. I don't know who should have it. I don't know. You will need to think about it, because I bet you don't know either. You might think you know, but we have no idea. So, moving on. The bantamweight division. Sean O'Malley is the champion. We have some issues with rankings, title shots, and contenders. Surprise, surprise. That's literally all I talk about in every single division. Merab Dvalishvili is a human wrench inside of an engine that we call the UFC. And he insists on fucking things up further. He insists on twisting the storyline and completely altering the plans. And he's not helping people fix that at all. The UFC will not, and Dana has said they don't, hold people in number one contender forever. That doesn't happen. You don't get to sit. Someone else will come and take your spot and go and fight for the title, right? Merab won't let him stay in the UFC. They will kick him out of the UFC if him and Aljo don't sort something out. They're going to change weight class, or Merab just has to, or Aljo, either one has to just choose to not fight for the title anymore, which is pretty dumb. What's the point in fighting in the rankings if you're not fighting for the title? But one of them has to do it, because Merab has been out. He says that, this is what Merab says. I want Aljo to get his rematch, and then I will fight Sean. If Aljo loses again, I guess is what he means. But what if Aljo wins? Maybe Aljo goes up to 45 then. That is obviously a possibility. But what if Aljo wants to stay? But you're just gonna chill in the division and hold up that top spot and give it to no one? You're not going to be allowed to do that. You can try, but you're not going to be allowed to, not for long. Merab has been ready to fight for the title already for quite a while. And if he is to wait until an Aljamain rematch, this means that Merab Dvalishvili will sit in the number one contender spot for 3 consecutive title fights and then claim it's his turn. That is not how we do it. And he's been ready the entire time, aside from surgery, which I believe he's recovered from now. We had him fight Jan, and he said, I'm next for the title, but my best friend holds it. So, what? Okay, sure. And then they said, he's moving up weight class, I'll sit, I'll chill, I'll wait for him to go. Annoying, but respectable. We can get behind it. By the way, no dishonor or disrespect to Merab in this. He's allowed to do what he wants, and these guys are friends, obviously. But just looking at it from a statistical and analytical point of view from the UFC side, he fought Jan, said, I want the top spot. Aljo's champion. Aljo goes and beats Cejudo. Then Aljo goes and loses to O'Malley. That's 2 title fights he's been waiting. O'Malley claims that he wants to go and fight Cheeto because Merab isn't ready yet. And also he doesn't want to fight Merab. And then after that Cheeto match, then we're supposed to expect an Aljamain rematch. That would be the 4th title fight Merab Dvalishvili sits in the number one contender spot for the duration of. So you think that Merab can win a fight and then 5 title fights later get the title? That's not how this works. That's not how this works. You can do as much MMA maths as you want. You will never get that result. Ever. From anyone. You can ask the most biased people in the world, and they will not tell you that Merab Dvalishvili is going to get a title shot after waiting outside for 4 separate title matches to claim his game, to claim his spot at the throne on the 5th one. It's never even happened for like 3 title shots, unless people have been out on injuries. Why do you think it's going to happen for the 5th one? It won't happen. Aljo needs to move up. Merab needs to move up. One of those two has to happen. Or one of them can never fight for the title again if they're just going to sit in the same division. So they need to make their mind up, or Dana's going to Dana might fire Merab, which is unheard of, especially because he's on a contract and he's been contracted to fight a certain amount of fights. Dana won't keep Merab in the organization if he keeps saying that he doesn't want to fight. Dana has multiple times expressed his discern. I believe that's the right word, discern, on the subject, saying that it's why did you even join the UFC if you didn't want to fight for the title? I'm back. Just had some camera issues. Allow me to resume where I was. We're not here to find out who will fight their friends and who won't, right? Dana's made it very clear that he doesn't like that. He doesn't appreciate people being friends with other fighters and choosing to not fight them. Plenty of guys before have fought their friends for championships as well. I can understand why Merab and Aljamain are skeptical, because a lot of those guys don't stay friends. Like, you're fighting for a fucking championship, and if one of you gets it, one of you doesn't, and the other guy flaunts it too much, or one of you is not the best loser in defeat, then it's gonna create tensions, and you guys might not get along. So I can see the issue in them not wanting to take that path, right? But no one's making them take the path. They are choosing it. No one's telling them that they have to fight. Merab's the one who said, I'm number one. He's the one that said, I'm next for the belt. You're the one, you said, I'm next for the belt. You said that while your friend was holding it. So you thought that someone else was going to fight you for the belt? Like, when you knew he's a reigning champion, obviously you understood there was plans to move up in a weight class, but I mean, before the Henry fight, like, Merab said, I'm number one after Jan. He said, I want to fight for the belt next. You must have known that was going to be a while, right? Like, a while. And I don't blame him then. What I blame him for is now. I blame Merab and Aljo for not choosing one of them to change division, man. Even if you have to go flyweight, I'm sure you guys won't be able to cut the flyweight. But you get what I mean? Like, somebody needs to move. You can't just stay, because one of you won't get to stay. One of you will be told to leave. And that will be really sad. It'd be really unfortunate to see either a future a past champion, or just Merab Dvalishvili, who is a great contender, a really, really good fighter with a great record and a great performances in the UFC. Either of those guys, it would be very unfortunate to see them be dismissed from the company without it being a retirement, or without it being their choice to leave. But it will happen. And I don't think that the fact that it hasn't happened, I don't know if it's never happened before, but it's definitely not commonplace. I don't think that it not being commonplace is going to stop it from happening. I think that even if it's the first time, Dana will make a point, because it's happening a lot recently. A lot of guys have friends in the same divisions they fight in. So we will see. We don't have long till the end of the year, so we'll probably hear really soon about whether O'Malley's going to fight Cheeto in that month. And if we do hear about that, we will obviously hear from Merab. He'll speak up. Him and Aljo, one of them will bark up, and so long as O'Malley beats Cheeto, either Aljo or Merab is next. That is a fact. After Cheeto, it's one of the two. They have to decide amongst themselves who it is. And if it's Aljo, Merab needs to go. If Aljo's next, why is Merab sitting in the rankings waiting? If Aljo's next, that means they will fight next year at the very earliest, like April. Maybe March. I fucking highly doubt March. I'm going to say April. If they fight in April, that means that Merab will fight... If they fight in April, that means that Merab will fight in 3 months to 4 months after that, right? May, June, say July. That's not even that long, right? Say that Merab fights in July. Do you know how long it's been since Merab's last fight with Piotr Jan? I believe that was in March of this year. So, if we take Merab Dvalishvili, who fought, here we go. He fought on March 11th, 2023. And if you wait until July next year, you can't sit out for 14 months with a guaranteed title shot. That doesn't happen unless the champion doesn't fight for 14 months. Or at least the champion didn't fight for 6 to 8 months. And then he came back, and now you're waiting. Like, that's the only way this could be excusable. But Merab has been there for 2 title fights now, and it will be a third one in December. He can't keep sitting there. That seat will not stay warm for long. So, I think they really need to calculate what they want to do, because even the fans are going to turn on them. If everybody wants Merab to get a shot, and everybody wants Aljo to get a rematch. The majority, at least, want those 2 things. But we can't have both, and we don't get to choose which one we get. So they have to choose now, or we'll never get either. And that's just the way it is. So, I sure hope so. Let's jump to the top of the weights. We were down at bantamweight and flyweight, and featherweight. Let's jump. We're going up to heavyweight. Jon Jones fighting Stipe. We know this. Sergey Pavlovich has been announced as the backup fighter for Jones versus Stipe. If Jon Jones pulls out, nobody wants to see Pavlovich versus Stipe. I'm sorry. I like both guys. I like Pavlovich and I like Stipe. That is not a fight anyone needs to or wants to see. You're just bullying old man Stipe at that point. Let Stipe fight Jones for the championship. If he wins, that's incredible. But everyone's expecting Jon Jones to win this fight, I think. And to retire afterwards. If he doesn't retire, I would give a massive props to Jon Jones, because what I think would be good, I think he should beat Stipe and fight one person after Stipe. I think that would make for a perfect career. Obviously, what he's done is just amazing. No one's even come close to being as much of an unbeatable, untouchable legacy that Jon Jones is. But going away for 3 years and coming back, fighting Garn, really short fight, lackluster as fuck, and then he goes into fight Stipe. If that Stipe fight's short as well, and he retires, man, that sucks. That is just missed opportunity. Missed opportunity, absolutely missed opportunity. If he beats Stipe, and it's not that fast, it's like a decent fight, even if it's like 2 rounds, that's okay. We just need to see more than 2 minutes. And then, so long as that is the case, I wouldn't want Jones to retire, but he could, and that's fine. But it will look so much prettier on that resume if he fights Stipe, beats Stipe, and then fights one more guy. Pavlovich or Aspinall are the 2 that I have in mind. They're the only 2 that it would make sense for him to fight. However, I don't think it'll happen. Ankalaev would be fucking hilarious. Like, I'm just thinking of a wrestling matchup, and there's not really many in the heavyweight division aside from, like, yeah, not in the top 5 at least. But I'm thinking about light heavyweight, because that's where Jones needs to be. Ankalaev versus Jon Jones would be so interesting to me, at least, just because of the grappling in that match. But at heavyweight, there's no one else. So, in the instance that doesn't happen, which is most likely, about 95%, it's probably 95% chance that Jon Jones retires after this fight. I think that's pretty much a fact, and that's what he said. That's what we've been thinking for a long time. He's not dispelled it. Stipe hasn't dispelled it. I think it's pretty likely. Once he fights Stipe and retires, there will be a vacant championship. There'll be a vacant title. I think we already have our 3 best heavyweights for the next 5 years. 5 years is a very random number I chose, but it's for the next few years. I think Cyril Gane, Tom Aspinall, and Sergey Pavlovich are going to absolutely run this division for the next few years. They're all just so different to the other guys. Sergey's not so much. He's kind of a standard heavyweight in the sense of being just a big tall guy that can knock you out. But he's different in the sense of the power and the come up. A lot of heavyweight guys lose. Heavyweight's a division that has a lot of losses in it because they're big guys. It's a lot easier to get caught in a heavyweight fight. Sergey doesn't get caught. He's the catcher. Like he catches everyone. So I think that he's inevitably going to be a good fighter. But Cyril Gane and Tom Aspinall are very, very different. It's a nice breath of fresh air into the division to see the fluidity of Cyril Gane and the movement of him being the great kickboxer that he is. And Tom Aspinall is just, he's got the wrestling obviously, and he's just a different kind of guy in the sense of being unorthodox to a degree. Where I think these three are just separated from the rest of the division. It's really weird. There's a massive gap, I feel like, in skill in the heavyweight division. And Jon Jones obviously just surpassed everyone ridiculously. I think if Ngannou and Jones fought, it'd be interesting, but at the same time, Ngannou can't really wrestle. And after seeing Cyril Gane versus Jon Jones, obviously we know Cyril Gane can't wrestle either, but I wouldn't be shocked just to know that Francis Ngannou and Jon Jones would just go straight to the ground and Jon Jones wins eventually. So what's to say that that's not going to be the future of this division? Like, the guys that are different, the guys that present a challenge. I don't think there's much to say that won't be the future of this division, because what else do you have? The guys with the one punch power to knock people out, it's slowly starting to not cut it anymore. Just every division is slowly rising over the past years of the UFC, right? From flyweight all the way up to heavyweight, becoming harder and harder and harder to get knockouts. And the higher in divisions you get, the easier it is to knock someone out because you're bigger guys with more power. But over the years, it's just been slowly slipping upwards, where the barrier of being able to knock someone out is so much higher. Like, we rarely see flyweight and bantamweight and featherweight knockouts. Like, knockout. We see TKOs, like we saw Sean O'Malley's one, right? But you don't see someone get starched cold. Not all the time. Heavyweight? Dude, people nearly die in heavyweight fights with the way they get put out. But that used to be pretty normal for a lot of divisions. Like, people got knocked out. That's how fighting worked. Not really anymore. Guys have good chins, good head movement, good defense. So the smaller divisions with less damage on a smaller surface of area on your hand is starting to get hard to knock people out in. So I think that heavyweight is going to be one of the last few that allows for that kind of power to really shine, especially because of how much heavier those guys are than the rest of the divisions. But I think regardless of whether heavyweight still has that glimmer of knockout possibility, it's still dissipating, and we're still losing it because the people are just getting too good, which isn't a bad thing. It's just a fact that the wrestler guys are starting to become kickboxers, and the kickboxer guys are starting to become wrestlers. And it happens in every division, and and heavyweight is one of the ones that has the least of it, but it's beginning to have it now. And I think that because of that, the guys that are starting that, like Cyril Gane and Tom Aspinall and Pavlovich, just off of his skill, but those two guys are the ones that are changing things up. I think changing that shit up is why they're going to run it. I think that inevitably no one really is going to be able to put a finger to them when they have something the rest of the division doesn't have yet, until maybe 5 years. In 5 years, you've got like a new influx of talent and fighters where they may have learnt this, and these guys are now coming up balanced like the rest of the divisions, with jiu-jitsu ability, grappling ability, as well as kickboxing and boxing ability. So I do not think that Jon Jones will stay. I'd love him to stay, but I don't think it'll happen. I believe that Cyril Gane, Tom Aspinall, and Sergey Pavlovich would all be good fights for him, but he won't. Oh, sorry, Gane's already fought him, but Tom Aspinall and Pavlovich would be good fights for him, but he won't do it. So all three of those guys, I think, will definitely be. We could have some series like trilogies or rematch situations between those guys. I think that rivalries will be built between them, being that they're all at the top right now, and I don't see any of the guys at the bottom beating them. I see them beating each other badly, but I don't see that any guys at the bottom coming up to beat them enough. Maybe in that you got your decision wins and submission wins and whatnot, but I don't see any big TKO or KO wins happening over those guys. They're just really good. and they're really, really defensively sound as well. So we will see. We'll see. It's interesting. I'm glad the heavyweight division is starting to finally get a little bit more spice into it. Not that it's a boring division, but it's just there's been, with Jon Jones coming up, it's kind of puts a halt on things, and a lot of stuff can't go forward. We can't have the contenders that we've been seeing rise for the past couple of years. They have kind of stopped and are just sitting a bit, in limbo, waiting for the Jon Jones Stipe situation to arise and also die down afterwards, so that they can then really. It's a gimmick, right? Like, I don't dislike Jon Jones at all, but we know it's a gimmick, right? That Jon was obviously gonna win, I guess, against, as much as I thought he wasn't gonna win against Garner. It's like, now it kind of just makes sense. Like, he's not coming to fight. Jon Jones isn't coming to heavyweight because he wants to fight heavyweight. He's coming to heavyweight because he wants to achieve more and leave. This isn't a I want to do more thing. It's a what can I do before it's too late. So I seriously think that Jon Jones is here to make a statement and leave. He's not here to beat competition. He's not here to prove he's the best heavyweight. Even if he says he is, he's not. He's here to beat the current best heavyweights, but he's not here to be the best heavyweight. That's two different things, two very different things. The division has a lot of potential once Jon leaves. So I would love him to stay, and I want him to stay, but he won't. So when he leaves, I promise you now, those three guys, they will run shit. They will run shit. Tell me what you think. Let me know in the comments anything that you guys disagree on, agree on. Maybe I missed something, or you have something to add to anything I say. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching or listening. This has been the Mixed Martial Podcast, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.